There we go. And of course, what we really want to do is more of the same, right? So basically, I just want to take us further from what we were doing, right? We've been doing extruding and bridging border edges, right? And that's, we've seen, actually quite capable of allowing us to build this car out pretty far, right? And we can start to see that we could build out more stuff. Like, I kind of left these open to maybe do something different, but I'm kind of like, these things will kind of work together pretty well for us. So technically, remember, you can actually go in here and select these two edges, right? And use your shortest path, right? Remember, that's in the select menu. Select linked shortest path. I've, of course, set up a quick key for it. And then I can go shift left click and then shift left click on those and then shortest path. So remember, that is in the select menu. Select linked shortest path. I've got a quick key set up for it. And that's 3 edges to 3 edges, right? You will, however, notice, guys, right? You'll notice that there's 2 edges that aren't selected here, right? So basically, keep in mind that 3 edges to 3 edges. Now, Blender, unlike, say, something like Maya, can actually do uneven edges, right? It can do 2 to 3, it can do 2 to 4. It will have a tendency to create triangles for that, though. So keep in mind that it's still a good idea to kind of always do same number to get the best result. But what it will do is when you bridge, it will sew these up right here. It'll actually do auto connect. So remember, we have a bridge tool. Right click, right? Because remember, right click will bring up your options for your edge tools. And you'll see that some of those are right here, like bridge edge loops. And you can see I've already assigned a quick key to it, Shift B. So bridge. And you see how it automatically kind of merges those together. Now, of course, pretty much every tool in Blender, and let me move this up a little bit so we can see this a little bit better. There we go. We'll have a little options box down here, right? You can click on it. And you see that this is set to open loop. You see you can do closed loop, loop pairs. You can have it twist if you wanted to. It's even got a control for merge factor. And you can actually have it do multiple cuts. So you actually have some cool options if you want to pick stuff here as well. So keep in mind that you can go in here and there are some options for your bridge tool. Things like twist, which in this case isn't going to do much for us because it's already kind of merging. Number of cuts, so I can put a bunch of edge loops in there. Didn't really want that. But generally, automatically it'll kind of merge these guys together for you. So you see how it's really easy to kind of just do a bridge on multiple edge loops just to kind of fill that in, right? And then, of course, my tweak tool is I've set to my right mouse button. But remember, Q toggles you through those, right? And I can just go in here and I can bring this edge in a little bit if I wanted to because I'm like, I decided it's a little far out. But one of the cool things about this method is you see how you can kind of go in here and fill in as you go later on, right? Like these guys can come back pretty far in if you want to. And you can adjust and design as you go. It's kind of one of the neat things about this method is you are going to get, remember 1 for vertex, I can move that vertex, 2 back, go 2 back for edges right here. This great thing about this method is that it lets you, as we've seen, kind of build the forms the way you want to, right? There is another big way to build cars. There's actually kind of probably 3 big ways nowadays to build stuff like this. This way, which is my favorite, just sculpting it massively in something like ZBrush and then retopoing it, which has some of its own advantages. Sometimes I'll use aspects of that in my work. And then there's this other method, which Blender doesn't really have much in the way of a real bi-rail tool system, at least that I found so far. And I also really don't like bi-rails at all, so I'm not that motivated to find it in Blender, but I haven't really found it. So it's kind of really a really time-consuming method to build it through splines. But one of the great things that splines will do for you when you're building a vehicle is you can just kind of draw curves out that kind of define the panel. And you can kind of draw the shape, right? How the panel bends and curves around stuff, right? And that's one of the great advantages to spline modeling sometimes, where you draw curves out and you just like kind of loft between curves. I mean, that's probably how you do it in Blender here is you just draw a bunch of curves and bridge the curves together. But it just takes a lot of time. And this method gives you kind of that same benefit, right? Since we're working from border edges, we can extrude and kind of pull them out to bend and form their contours and then kind of connect together later on. So for me, I love this method because it kind of gives you the best benefit of building a car by splines, but it's all real-time polygons and fast and easy. Spline modeling just takes a lot more time, a lot more figuring out how things to go together. But this gives you the major benefit to that, where you can kind of draw kind of the shape out that you want, right? So this is an excellent method. I did not invent this. I've been using this method for years and years and years now, but other people came up with it, and I saw them do it and going, wow, that's a really cool way to build a car. A lot easier than the old spline modeling methods. But it's not really kind of right versus wrong. You could build a great car using curves. It's just going to take you longer. This method is going to allow you to build that same car easier and faster. And you have the flexibility to design as you go if you want to and adjust and tinker, which with splines, you really not that easy, right? So for me, this is just a method that gave me the coolest thing about splines and curve modeling, where you can kind of define the panel just by drawing it out. But it allows me to do it with all the speed, flexibility, and real-time feedback of polygons, because it's polygon modeling. So this is a method I love for building these things. And what we can do is we can start to build out more, right? You'll notice how we've kind of built this up here. And one of the things we could do is we could start to fill this in more if we wanted to, right? We can kind of see how there's several edges here. So remember, Alt-C is your loop cut, right? It's your quick key for your loop cut, although it's right here. And I could always just go put in kind of another edge loop right there. And if I wanted to, remember, if you hold down left mouse button, drag, it slides, right? But I feel like I need a little bit more. So I can always just do another left click drag, kind of put another one in right there, right? And then, of course, I can go back to my tweak tool if I wanted to. It's right there. The nice thing is if that's what your selected one is, you'll notice it goes back to that. When you hit Q, whatever the last active of these was, Q takes you back to that. So you can actually keep tweak tool on most of the time and then only switch to the other selection types when you really need them, right? Then I could, tweak this forward a little bit, tweak that forward a little bit. So we can just kind of adjust those shapes a little bit more if we wanted to. We could do it from the different views that we're modeling in. But you see how we kind of kept it simpler up to this stage? We could always, and remember when you tweak, it leaves that selected. So you can easily just switch to E for rotate. Maybe do a middle mouse button to rotate that a little bit. Click on that edge, rotate a little bit so you can kind of make those adjustments. And then we can go back to the tweak tool. And I could maybe tweak that back up a little bit. And these kind of make little minor adjustments to your shape as you go. But you'll now see that we could start to kind of connect these back up. Right? So I could select that edge. Shift left click there. X for shortest path. That's what I've set the quick key to. Shift left click, shift left click. And remember that shortest path is in the select linked shortest path. I've just put a quick key to it. And in this case, I want to do bridge, right? I've set a quick key to that, but if you right click, right? There's lots of tools that you can use that don't have quick keys, right? So one of the things you can always do is just hold the right click and it brings those options up, right? There's our bridge. And that bridges those together, right? Now, if we wanted to, we could say, hey, I'd like to have a little more crispness here. So I can do Alt-C, right, for loop cut. It's right there. And you notice, remember that loop cut tool is always kind of going opposite edge to opposite edge. So when you have triangles or n-gons, it'll usually stop. But I can left click drag to kind of move that up a little bit. Now, there's a tool that I haven't talked to you guys about as much here. And you see how this kind of sharpens it? The closer this is up to it, it sharpens it. I'll just go to my tweak tool. What I could do is I could easily bring these in to sharpen this up. Maybe bring that out a little bit. But some of you guys remember this from previous classes, one for vertex. The closer you put an edge loop to another edge loop, particularly when you have a subdivisional surface modifier on, what that does is it rounds the shape off. I'm going to turn the preview off because you can see in low res, this edge loop is closer to this edge loop. But what the subdivisional surface algorithm does is it rounds the shape off. It's actually giving us 4 more quads for each one, right? We could always go to advanced, and if we wanted to kind of turn on some other things, we could, but usually it's kind of fine if we don't, right? But basically, this polygon, when you have a subdivisional surface modifier on, it's actually 4 smaller quads, right? So if you actually were able to look at it, like, say, particularly not smooth shaded, you'd see 4 quads making up this quad. But it also kind of averages the positions of the vertices, particularly where you have a corner, right? Rounding the shape off. So basically, the closer an edge is to there, it sharpens it. The further away it is, it softens it. So one of the ways you can get some nice kind of sharper kind of corners and edges is indeed by moving those edges closer to other edges. So you see how now we can kind of get that nice kind of sharper angle right there? So keep that in mind as you build this, that as you add in extra edge loops, it will sharpen the shape up on a subdivisional surface algorithm. So it's kind of giving us a bevel without using the bevel tool. You really only see this at corners, right? If you're putting a bunch of loop cuts on a flat grid, you wouldn't really see much difference until you get to the very corners, the very edges, right? So you really kind of tend to see this on the corners of stuff. On a character, you generally try to avoid this because characters are supposed to be soft, right? Characters, creatures. But on like a car, you're going to want areas where it's pretty soft and rounded, but there are going to be areas where you want it to be sharper. And that was just loop cut, right? Loop cut to kind of put that edge loop in there, and I just tweaked it. Having said that, if I was to double left click, right? So remember, double left click selects an edge loop, and I was to right click to bring up the options for the edge context menu, you see there is actually an edge slide tool. Blender has a slide tool. If I click on that, you'll notice what it does is it slides that edge loop along what already exists. So whereas the move tool would just let me free move it anywhere, the slide tool actually slides it along the existing surface. So if I was to slide it up this way, I would try to slide it along these edges. If I was to slide it downward, I would try to slide it along these edges. So it kind of constrains and moves along there. So you can always kind of tighten up areas with slide tool if you need to, right? Kind of cool to know about that. You've got that option there if you need it. Slide tool can be quite useful for that. In this case, I kind of wanted maybe a little bit of kind of like maybe a little vent there for that, right? Because we're making this kind of door here a little bit. What was that? Okay, let me see. That's right there. Yep. Right. So what we could do is, remember, if you double left click on an edge, it selects an edge loop, right? So you kind of selected that edge loop right there. And maybe I want a little vent here, right? So remember, we have our extrude tool, and these are border edges. So I can easily hit Control E, and then middle mouse button to kind of bring this in a little bit. Now, you see that's kind of going out there a little bit, so I can hit W for move, bring it in a little bit. R for scale, right? And remember, middle mouse button will do uniform scale, and middle mouse button on the move tool will do the kind of free move, right? The view move. Then I can do Control E for extrude again. Middle mouse button will allow us to do that view extrude. Then I can just change view a little bit. W for move. And you see we can kind of create a little bit of a vent right there. And we can, of course, go to 3 for face mode. Our tweak tool. Bring this back out a little bit, right? We can just kind of make little adjustments right here. Just kind of adjust that shape a little bit there. But you see how we can kind of create that nice little vent there? Maybe 2 for edge mode, and I can bring this back. And so you can start to see that one of the great things about this method is you really have kind of all the best aspects of building a car through curves and splines. If you ever like work a little more with like Maya or something like that, you can see there's bi-rail options in there. But bi-rails take a long time. And this is kind of gives you the benefits of the coolest parts of that method, but with all the great benefits that polygons have. So this is a great method, and I know like Ryan and Dante and Chris, Matt, remember building the spaceship from last term? Oh, that, yeah, I think you, yeah. But basically, this is the same stuff, right? We just didn't have wheels and wheel wells, and we're not going to, we didn't build rims on the spaceship last year. That would have been weird. But this is that same technique. You can even use this to build elements of armor. So this is actually a super awesome technique for building lots of different stuff. So you can see we've got this whole extra nice little panel here, but you see how it kind of flows, right? We get this little vent that kind of flows all the way back into here. So you really get this kind of cool ability to do this that box, just creating a box and just trying to shape a box wouldn't give you. That's why we started from those wheel wells, kind of duplicated those polygons off those wheel wells, and we just started extruding and bridging border edges from there. And now we can start to fill the rest of this in. So I can do Alt-C to kind of just do a loop cut right there. I can do a loop cut right here as well. And then we can just kind of bridge these together. He went back to the other classroom. And so we can easily start to bridge these together. And was that? Should be, I think. Yeah, check for me, Dante. I think it's like G5. Let me double check right here. Let's see. Sorry, guys, it's gonna be weird. Let's see. Gotta pull that map out to see here. All right. I should be, I think, G1. Yeah, it's G1. It should be G1. Yep. And so we can see how we could bridge this, right? Just with our normal bridge tools. So, thank you. So we could actually bridge this together here really quick to really connect these in different ways, right? So this is one of the great things about this method. I can even hit Alt-C for a quick loop cut to tighten that up a little bit. But you see how we can get these really cool different flows for the shape of our mesh here as we adjust. So we can slowly build these up to kind of be neat little forms, right? I can grab these edges, right click, bridge, right? Like I said, I've already got a quick key to it, Shift B. And that's what I did, I bridged those. And even here, if you need to, you can always double click on an edge to select this hole, the edge loops for this hole. And if you right click, there is a new face from edges option, right? That'll actually fill that in as a polygon. And you can see how you can slowly kind of build together these forms and shapes to create different interesting dynamic forms. Now obviously we're going to keep going here, and I could always rebuild some of this stuff if I wanted to later on. But I'm just trying to really get you guys to see how you're not beholden to just making this straight linear grids with this method, right? You can kind of really build in kind of dynamic forms that wrap around in interesting ways with interesting shapes. And that's one of the great secrets to this method, is that it really allows you. It should be that class next door. All right. So basically, that's kind of where we wanted to end for this. As I just wanted to kind of make sure to kind of get you guys to kind of, we had a few interruptions, and that'll come out in the video. But, that's the way it goes sometimes. But I'm just trying to really get you guys to see the beauty of this method, is that it frees you to build much more dynamic shapes than a box would, right? Our crab was really just a box that we extruded a couple of polygons off to create legs, and that's because it's a crab. There's not much going on, and we made sure it was a simpler crab, right? Even our building wasn't that complicated. We did some neat things with booleans and cool things with pipes, but we could still do a lot of that with simple extrusions and bevels because it's chairs and tables and walls, right? But you get to a car, you get to a spaceship, you get to more advanced characters, creatures, even more advanced, more dynamic, interesting furniture, and trying to get those more interesting kind of curved forms really kind of needs you to break away from just a box, right? Box modeling is awesome. It's great for building a lot of core things, but there are times when you don't want to use the box modeling method. But you'll notice we are still using polygonal modeling. We're still using things like extrude and bridge and loop cuts, but by going to kind of paper thin surfaces and border edges, right? Edges that only have one face connected to them, you actually can free yourself up to not build from boxes and build interesting panels and shapes and forms that are more complicated and merge into each other in unique and organic ways. But it's still fast, it's still real time, it's still polygon modeling, and it's still using a lot of the tools you already know, but we're just using them in a slightly different way by doing it on border edges. And this is a great way to build cars, spaceships, all kinds of stuff like that. All right, so that'll be probably a great place to stop.